Hello and welcome.
G'day everyone.
Welcome to Oz by Drone. I'm Greg.
I'm John.
And speaking of Gregs, we've got another Greg hiding in the background today. We've got Greg Tyrrell, who's our special guest. Greg is from AAUS, the Australian Association of Unmanned Systems. Hello and welcome, Greg.
G'day, Greg and John. They're great to be here.
So with two Gregs, I'll be GK and you can be GT today. Otherwise, we're going to get really confused.
That's great news. Oh, look, it's very exciting, guys, to have a GT with us today. GK and I are both members of the association. And, you know, if you like, they're a great group that represents the broader aspect of the whole industry, right through to everybody who wants to fly, and represents the interest of those who want to fly in all ways, in ways of safety, in ways of you know, allowing us to have this privilege of flying with RPAS. And so it's great to have him on board today. And you might have some chat questions for Greg. And look, go check out the website. I'm going to give it a plug straight away, the AAUS website, which will be put down in the comments there. Check out what they do and become a member. You know, that's a sort of way to step forward with your flying, especially if you wanted to, you know, check out what's happening in terms of the regulatory side of this hobby that we love. Okay. Absolutely.
And I've put the website in the chat. So just a quick welcome, first of all. Welcome to everyone again. And John, what have you been up to this week?
Well, lots of stuff. I've just been talking to GT. We're looking at the EVLOS stuff and the trials, as well as sort of still thumbing my way in pages through the Senate inquiry, which we're going to be talking about today. I looked at a job this week, which is pretty exciting, down in Melbourne. We're making a 3D model of St Mary's Cathedral. Tricky little job because of the location, but we're actually stitching together about 8,000 photographs to make up a 3D model, and they're going to spend lots and lots of money refurbing this absolutely beautiful building. Done with the Phantom 4 Pro, nice and light aeroplane to work in that environment, take great photos, but hopefully over the next few months I'll be able to show you that model and perhaps present a bit of how we put something like that together, and then incorporate it into engineering design drawings so that the people who are actually working on the restoration can do their quantity surveying, they can do all sorts of planning and visualization in sections they're doing. So that's a really great project, and the building's amazing. The spires are massive, going up a good 70 meters or so. So lots of great fun challenges for flying. But I'll do a bit of video of us doing it as well. So that's my.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Yep. Okay. And you've been playing a little bit of music, and I must say, guys, I did see John playing this week, and I've got to embarrass him now. We're talking about drones, but in case you didn't know, John is also a musician. Oh, sorry, I meant a drummer, but
yeah,
boom,
thank
tish.
you. Yeah, there you go. Boom, boom.
Anyway, he had a great gig, and for those of you who are in Melbourne, he's going to be taking that band down in Melbourne. So if you want to meet John, the musician, and the flyer at the same time, he'd love to have you come and join his gig. I'll put a link in the description after the show. It's not there now. So for those of you in Melbourne, you can come along and watch John when he goes and makes lots of noise.
Thanks for the plug, mate. Thank you. Lovely.
Anytime. So just one other thing. So in the chat during the show, if you put the hashtag #question in there, that'll bring it to our attention a little bit quicker. If you've got a question for either John or myself or GT, that'll bring it to our attention. Speaking of which, thank you to Mel, the Phantom Trucker, who's doing all of his work in the background. For those of you who are not regulars, Mel sits behind the scenes and does some magic to bring all of the stuff that's coming up on your screen. So with all of that in mind, I do this every week. I'm not fully at the place where I need to be at the time when I need to be there, but I'm there now.
My life's like that.
Your life? I thought you said your wife. Ooh!
Bing, bang.
So let's get started. So we've got some great news this week, starting with our first story. So we've got the story about endurance. So let's bring that one up on the screen first.
Many times over the last 30 years, the biggest problem we've had on the fire ground is communication. Obviously, the most important thing is information, but if you can't get that communicated properly to the right people in the right time, bad things can happen.
So what we're doing here is we're trying to understand, can we use drone technology to place communication systems on a drone, fly it high enough in the air to get coverage in a large coverage area for public safety, so that when they go to an area that they have no communication systems in place, they can take it with them and it can follow them around wherever they need to be.
And they can do this without requiring an additional or a manned platform.
Before and leading up to the competition or workshop, and then at the workshop itself. A lot of breakthroughs happen right here in the field during the course of the competition.
So the video goes on a little bit longer, but we'll just stop it there. So essentially this is a challenge and a competition from NIST. It's in the US. It's the National Institute for Standards and Testing, I think is what the acronym stands for. And they've got a competition having a look at, can a vertical takeoff drone hoist 20 pounds, or in other words 9 kilograms of comms equipment into the air and hover in place for 2 hours. You were talking about this with us a little bit before we went to air, John?
Yeah, well, look, we've just done a tender for the Rural Fire Service here using a tethered aircraft for the same purpose. So it's an observation platform as well. We've put a limit on a 4-hour flight time with a tether just because you want to land and check the engines and do it, every 4 hours, have a look at the airplane. But the physics of an untethered aircraft at 2 hours is complicated. So a couple of the designs that have been looked at, you saw them pouring gasoline in there. Small gasoline engine or a model aircraft engine with, if you like, an alternator, which creates electric current, which provides the current through a battery system to, you know, much like your hybrid cars, a hybrid powered aircraft, basically. We also looked at a small turbine engine to do that. And, you know, boy, these things get heavy after a while. There's some serious engineering challenges. We actually think in the 2 hours, the battery technology, if it climbs enough, we'll get there. You know, we're at 25% of that now. It's not hard to do a 30-minute flight with that payload at the moment with batteries. That's not a lot, you know, 30 minutes or so, but it's a significant achievement really for the physics, if you like. So, yeah, I think it's a great thing. $50,000 prize money, you know, let's go.
That sounds good. That sounds good. And moving on from there, we've got something which is, we don't have any video for this, but it's a story where there's a website, the details are in the description, controlling drones via voice channels. So I'll go back and rewind a little bit, right? So people want to control drones at distance for some of the new ideas and the new work that's happening. And there are people who said, well, we don't trust the 3G and the 4G network and all of these kind of things, and I get that. But then someone came up with another idea that's based on something from the past, and I'll talk about the past first. Back when the internet was just taking off, before DSL, you know, people were using voice modems, right? They were using analog modems. And those modems were using voice phone lines, and that was fine. And then the next thing you know, there was ISDN, and people were using data services, but that was expensive. And people tricked the telephone network to do what was called data over voice. So you're able to do 64K circuits quite easily over a voice network. So what I think this is all talking about is going back to that old idea of data over voice and, you know, using the voice network, which is obviously a lot more reliable than some of the 3G and the 4G things. The voice network is everywhere. I think it's a great idea in terms of how to extend the control of a drone.
So we're sending the data, the telemetry and control data. We're actually controlling the aircraft with our voice?
Not talking with our voice, but using the voice network.
That's right.
And the data is going over it. But yeah.
Say, how many people would want to control their aircraft with Siri?
Can you land now, please? I'm sorry. Did you want me to get pizza?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. I mean, I think, you know, again, this is one of those classic things, and we're talking about this with GT earlier on another subject. When you actually, when you have these great ideas, and look, I think it's great that we research them and look to those solutions. When you're actually sitting with someone else and you're flying, or in a team, you're flying aircraft, communications in your voice are between the pilots. You know what I mean? The last thing you want to do is be talking to the aeroplane as well. But you know, you try these things and work it out. But look, I think the possibility of 4G and it's better, if you like, cellular communications are only going to make things quite exciting in the RPAS industry for sure, as it gets better and more robust, you know. What do you think, GT?
GK, well, many years ago, my old flying days with a company called Aerosonde, which are now called Textron Systems Australia, we used to control the Aerosonde over very long distances via the same mechanism that GK is talking about. We were plugged into the phone system in Melbourne. We had antenna systems wherever we were flying, which could have been across the other side of the globe. So the aircraft might be 100 Ks from an antenna system, and we'd be plugged into that via the telephone network.
Wow.
So that's a technology that worked beautifully back then, and there's no reason why it still shouldn't work great today.
But I guess the beautiful thing about what we're seeing here is this technology. You saw the size of that module that we had on the screen a few moments ago. It's really, really small, very, very lightweight, being able to put it into an aircraft and use that just out of the box. Really great idea. But let's move on from that. So next one. This is just some vision that I'd like to share about drought in Australia. shot from a drone. So for those of you who are not Aussies, let's put that up on the screen.
It's the worst drought in a generation. That's what farmers who live in outback New South Wales are saying, as these fertile plains, part of Australia's food bowl, see their lowest rainfall in decades.
Kangaroos, yeah. There's not much happening in the rain department out there,
this
folks.
This year saw the second hottest summer ever recorded. But
so there was a different version of this video that I had edited, and my apologies, I've got the wrong one up on the screen.
That's all right, you can still see what's going on.
Yeah, look, long story short, we wanted to share with people the vision of the drought where we've got all of this stuff happening in Australia, and certainly encourage people to have a look at that clip. Again, the link is in the description. We're going through, obviously, some challenges, and, you know, we just ask you to think about the Aussies over here who don't have water at the moment. But let's move on from that. Next one on our list, we don't have any vision for this. Or we do, ROBORACE, we do, I stand corrected. Let's play that. No, I'm out of order here. I've clicked to the wrong one. Have I? No, I'm in the right place. Senate, one more try. So, the Senate inquiry. So, in Australia, we've had the recent Senate inquiry, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in a couple of moments. But we found there was an article from this company, Xinhuanet, which I'd never heard of before, where they discuss the mandatory licensing that is being proposed by the government, and also that Australians will be soon forced to pass a written and practical test before they're allowed to do so. Now, the exact details of that obviously haven't been fleshed out, but that was a recommendation from the Senate, and I encourage you to be ready with some surveys that we're going to do in a couple of minutes. We're going to post them on the website, so be ready with a second web browser window to participate with that. But we'll skip right from that into ROBORACE. So this is something that we came across this week, where a guy is taking a little mini drone on a tour of an R&D facility of ROBORACE. So just some interesting footage. Let's have a look.
Skill.
Notice the guy sitting at the desk and very close to him there.
Oh, that's great.
Of course, being indoors, they don't have the same 30-metre rule applying.
Well, it might be a 100-gram aeroplane.
It might very well be.
That's cool.
But just an interesting clip. I've got a couple more that I want to share today. This one, first of all, from Queensland Police Service. So they've been doing some drone training, and the Queensland Police Service wanted to showcase their skills. Let's have a look at that.
They didn't crash, did they? Why do these guys all buy Inspires? I'll never know. Is it because they're more expensive?
Yeah, I think so.
I've got no idea what you buy Inspire for. You know, it's a great. I've got one. I can tell you, it doesn't come out of the box. But anyway, that's good. Another topic.
But just an interesting view of our law enforcement starting to get into the use of drones, and thought I'd share that with you. And we've got one more story today. Not quite law enforcement, but our Defence Department has the Military International Drone Racing Tournament.
Right.
Which I thought is an awesome idea.
You know, the Australian Army's got a good team, man. We're real players in that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drone racing team, and those boys can fly.
Yeah, so this is going to be held in October 2018. So if anyone watching is in the Army and knows how to fly a quad,
there is.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is. There's an actual team. Australian Army have our own team. We're probably there. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah.
Where's the comp?
It's going to be in Victoria Barracks during in October. I haven't got the exact date of that, but I think it's on the video that we're about to put up on the screen. Let's have a look.
Yeah, they're hosting it. Yeah. Good on them.
From the 18th to 20th of October, Australia will be hosting the inaugural Military International Drone Racing Tournament. We're looking forward to competing in a friendly and professional manner, but my money's on the Australians to win.
Really cool idea, and it's good that we're leading in this area. And certainly we've had discussions before about the military use of drone technology. You know, there are people in other parts of the world who are definitely using it to good effect. The fact that our people are being trained in this is really good. And you know, when I was at the AAUS conference earlier this year, you know, we had some people from Army actually calling for tenders for people to do some training in this area to get their people up to skill. So it's good to see that we must have some good results already from that.
And you know what the coolest thing about this is for me, everybody, because I'm an aviator that, you know, loves that era of the 30s and 40s in aviation. And, you know, we're reliving it now in every sense. You know, in 1930, air racing was a huge event. People used to come out to air races, watching the fastest aeroplanes, and of course the military were there like this, showing off their Spitfires or whatever, going fast. And racing we had women's air races, all sorts of fantastic things, and the public were drawn to. These days, of course, we all sit in aluminium tubes at 1,000 kilometres an hour, so racing doesn't seem to make much sense in terms of aviation. But right now, we're back in those glory days of early aviation, and this time, you know, with quadcopters and you know, unmanned aerial vehicles, and so it's an exciting time. You keep news clippings, you know, and one day your grandkids will look at you and say, "Oh, I remember when we used to race these quads." You know, it'll be exciting to keep all of this as memorabilia one day. Don't you worry, it'll be worth something.
Yeah, I just had a message from some people. The audio balance is a bit out today. Yeah, we had some weird things before the beginning of the show today, so I've just turned John up. Apologies for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, let's go.
So moving on from that, as I said at the beginning, we've got Greg Tyrrell as our guest here today. And welcome, Greg. I've pressed the wrong button. I pressed that one. I'm sorry. That button. There you go.
Thanks.
I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
So, Greg, just starting at the beginning, tell me, where did AAUS start from? Where did it get formed from, and how did it all come about in your involvement?
I guess AAUS evolved probably around 2008, I recall. And initially, we were the Australian arm of AUVSI. And the idea initially was about hosting conferences in Australia and doing it in a not-for-profit manner, sharing information, networking, reaching out to end users, and to basically work towards a commercially viable industry.
Okay.
So over the years, we separated from AUVSI. The Americans like to control things from America, and we thought that there was an Australian industry approach that better served our industry. So we became AAUS somewhere around 2012, I believe.
Okay, okay. And recently, by the way, just before we continue with the next question, just to remind people, I've posted a link in the chat to some online surveying. Please do click on that link, and that'll start to fill in while we continue the discussion. So recently there's been a Senate inquiry, and can you tell me what have your members said about the report that's been published?
Yeah, it's a good question. We did send a survey to our members to comment on each of the 10 recommendations. We've had good feedback, and in a lot of cases we had feedback that was polar in its nature. So we had people either strongly agreeing or strongly disagreeing with a lot of the recommendations. On balance, though, we found that most of the recommendations were agreed by our members to some level.
Okay, most of them were agreed to some level. So speaking of which, last week we did some surveying on the first 5 of the recommendations, and we've now got number 6 that's being polled online live. Do you want to put that up on the screen, and we'll see if we can... It's coming, it's coming. Oops, I forgot to press a button. That was my bad. Output, NDI output, start. Here we go. It's coming. There we go. So this is question number 6, and you know we've got that live where our viewers can respond to that now. This particular question, the committee recommends the Department of Infrastructure, Regional Development and Cities, in cooperation with CASA, develop appropriate airworthiness standards for remotely piloted aircraft of all sizes and operations.
Ouch.
What does that mean? What does that mean practically?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And I think most of the recommendations had that level of vagueness about them that could be interpreted a number of ways. We've already got operational limitations about where we can fly, which means that we don't need any airworthiness certification whatsoever. In fact, there is no RPAS today that has airworthiness certification. Having said that, if we do want to start flying over populous areas and controlled airspace, we probably do need levels of airworthiness to apply to probably larger systems that want to do that. But if you want to remain clear of, you know, people, populace, and operate within the limitations of the standard operating conditions or other operational limitations, then we think there should be some form of tiered approach to airworthiness, ranging from no requirement all the way to fully airworthy.
I mean, here's an interesting question. Just for those people, we've got a lot of hobbyists here who enjoy drone racing and so forth. Does this potentially impact them as well? Are they going to have airworthiness standards for something that they're building themselves as well? And are they going to need to get it certified before they can fly?
That's a good question. I certainly hope not. I hope common sense prevails here. I think CASA are of the mind that as long as they're operating in a way that's safe, then we don't need to change that end of town. And it would be a huge impost to our industry if we forced certification requirements over small systems.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got 60% of people disagreeing with that one based on our poll now. Let's move to the next poll. So the next one I'll just send live now, otherwise you can't respond to it. Click the next button and click activate. There we go. Committee recommends that Australian government develop import controls to enforce airworthiness standards for foreign manufactured RPAS.
Yeah, look, again, from our point of view, this was the same as question 6, except we're looking at the importers. So I think that should be the same response as question 6. And whatever we do here, I think we really need to be in step with the rest of the world, or else we put Australia at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Can I ask, just in terms of who was talking to Senate about these recommendations before they pulled the recommendations out? That seems to be someone who, you know, it sounds like a good politically correct thing to say, but it doesn't sound like it was very connected to the industry.
Well, almost anyone could put a submission into that Senate inquiry.
Yeah, but I mean, there were lots of submissions, but how did it go from submission if you know, Greg, from submission to recommendation, or is that secret squirrel stuff?
I can't answer that. I'm not sure how they did that, but look, they certainly took a wide variety of inputs. But again, I think airworthiness standards are appropriate, but only when we start talking about larger systems and systems that want to fly over people, then we're going to need some form of airworthiness. But when we're talking about 95% of the industry and smaller systems, then I think that airworthiness is probably an overkill.
Perhaps it's something that, you know, where you're doing commercial work and you need to be type certified on a particular type of aircraft based on some criteria, then it might make sense. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think just to jump in there, we've already got certification requirements for aircraft that are over 150 kilos. And you know, the main thing, certification, I agree with a GT here. It's got its place in aviation. A lot of aviation safety is built around certified and certification. This idea that if you're going to use a component or anything on the aircraft, or the aircraft itself is certified to a certain standard, so you haven't got all sorts of rubbish flying up there. But again, the cost of that, you've got to, it just would kill it, this industry, if we stretch down into recreational. Because now, after many, many years in manned aviation, we've got a completely different system for the recreational pilot using aircraft that are under 600 kilos, where they can operate outside of a VH registration. So they're not a fully registered aircraft. And they do have a different level of certification, affordable level, that's commensurate with the type of operation that they're running. Some of the recreational manned aircraft aren't certified to fly in controlled airspace, aren't equipped to do that. They're not, you know, they're designed to fly out in a glider field or whatever. So there's a model for that already inside manned aviation. And I think if I've thrown my 2 cents in with, I think that's where this probably came from. They looked at the model of manned aviation and said, well, you know, everything's certified there. Let's you know, see what we can do with that. So that's why it's very fuzzy, because we're dealing in and just I'll make the point clearly here. When you've got a certification involving a manned aircraft, you're certifying something that someone's going to ride in. So in an experimental category, you're accepting that risk. You're accepting that risk yourself, that you're going to fly in the aircraft and that you may be under some danger because of the way the product is maintained or the way it's produced. Maybe some kind of failure in the system, all that sort of thing. Here, we're in an unmanned system, of course. You're not at direct risk in the aircraft itself. Mind you, at 150 kilos, everyone below that aircraft is at risk.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the next one. We've got 3 to go. The committee recommends, and I'll just cut to the chase, they're going to delegate administration of regulatory initiatives to other parts of government. That's my understanding of that. So relevant departments and agencies, they're going to delegate policing. So CASA won't have to do any enforcement, or they won't have to worry about the admin of the mandatory registration regime. Maybe you've got to go to Service New South Wales and register your drone. What do people think about that?
Where do you go, GT? Where you go?
Yeah, look, I mean, recommendation 8 was whole of government to explore effective methods around the introduction of, say, registration system, a tiered education program, and also harmonisation of the privacy laws. I think most of our members were in agreement with this, as long as it's administered in a simple and cost-effective way, particularly around registration. Obviously, that should be low cost and simple to administrate. Tiered training education. There is I guess, a concept here that a lot of the issues around illegal drone use at the moment comes about because of lack of education or lack of knowledge of the law. So if we introduce something very simple for recreational / excluded category operators to do a simple test to acknowledge that they know and understand what their legal requirements are, then that should be a good step at that end of town. And that tiered approach should extend to more complex stuff as well. So when people want to start doing beyond visual line of sight operations, or also flying in controlled airspace, they're going to probably need a greater level of knowledge and licensing than the current REPL currently gives them.
Okay.
So they're all good things. Privacy, also harmonisation of privacy laws is a good thing.
That's an interesting one. Like you mentioned that, and obviously that's in the body of the report, but I didn't see it specifically in that recommendation there.
Yeah, it is at the bottom of recommendation 8. It does talk about harmonisation of privacy laws.
Okay. Some of these I had to trim a little bit, and I might have missed that out by mistake to fit in the online survey.
Well, that's kind of a big one, I suppose, and one that's on everyone's radar at the moment. And I just, to jump in there quickly, the harmonisation makes sense. And again, I'm hoping that international best practice is done here. So rather than each state or each, because we've got a situation now where councils are worried about privacy, so they're taking on their own little charge again about privacy, saying it's privacy. And so, imagine if every council had a privacy law. So harmonisation is a really big deal here, because once that's in place and it makes sense, and perhaps it is something that works, then all of that might go away. We might not actually have this huge fear factor in the industry that seems to be plaguing us from all angles at the moment. Again, we put last week's show, we had more media stuff on privacy. Let's get that harmonisation in place, so that and the public educated on what it is too. And again, your point, Greg, what is, it's a camera, and perhaps a bit of harmonisation with using a camera in a public place and what you do with the photo and all that sort of thing. There's a bit of groundwork already done there, but there's still a way to go. I don't have the answers for that one.
Yeah, it's a good point though, John, around just being careful that we don't get picked on as an industry, and that any new privacy laws that come in place actually consider all surveillance devices rather than just a set of rules for drones.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Agree on that one. Let's activate the next one. We've got 2 to go. So recommendation that CASA work with Air Services Australia. I'll just send that one live. CASA work with Air Services Australia and other relevant agencies to implement a comprehensive research and data gathering regime. Information should be collated and centralised in a way that allows examination of RPAS registrations, operations, etc., etc. Some incidents, an evidence base to assess the efficacy of regulations and to inform the development of future policy and regulations.
All yours.
That one, Greg. Most of our respondents agreed to that. It certainly makes sense. The only thing that popped up in our survey were people are a little bit concerned about their own private data and how that is used. So as long as the data's controlled for access and distribution content, so I think it's probably a good thing to continue to learn from whatever data we can get hold of and evolve that way. Yeah.
Let's make an assumption for the people that are answering the survey at the moment. I can see we've got 33% in favour, 25 in favour, 50%. It's only 4 responses. Let's assume that the data is anonymised unless there is a particular regulatory reason to have it personally identifiable.
Well, what about, we're talking about personal data here. What you suggested before, maybe Service New South Wales might be, registering or providing the registration services. Okay, they currently have my driver's license details and my driving record history. I mean, there's we're going to have younger pilots perhaps being registered here, but I'm fairly comfortable. I mean, I have to be. If I want here's my point that I've made before. If I want the privileges to drive on the road, I accept that I have to be licensed. I've passed a test I agree to conform to those rules, and I agree that I should be punished if I don't. And that's basically everyone who has the privilege of driving. Well, everybody get used to it. If you want the privilege to fly, this is what it costs you. And you know, it's very much the same thing. You know, with that responsibility that you have. The driving test these days is 120 hours. 120 hours of driving, right? With 20 hours of night driving. Folks, to get a commercial drone license these days, with the CASA require you to have 5 hours logged in the logbook. I mean, get a grip. You know, of course, most people get more experience than that, but we are working towards getting this right so that we do have an industry that can move forward in a safe and professional way that accommodates recreational users. A recreational driver, that's what I am. I'm not a professional driver. I'm a recreational driver, but I accepted that I could, you know, I passed this rules and I have this license. In relation to that, it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just going to say the whole registration and all of testing and all of that kind of stuff, I agree with that personally. Yep. You know, at the end of the day, you want to get to a position where the industry can grow, and you can only do that eventually long term if you've got your systems going and broadcasting your position, your coordinates, but you can only do that if you can identify the drone and who it is that's flying it to make sure that you don't have spoofed data, right? So you need a trust mechanism in place there. You need certificates on the drones or equivalent technology to make that data reliable. And that's all linked into registration. And then the whole thing of linking that to licensing, that's a smart thing as well. A lot of people are very touchy about the topic, but, you know, personally, I think it needs to happen if this industry is going to have any chance of survival.
Yeah, we agree entirely with all of that sentiment. And the really, as you're pointing out, Greg, the good thing about it, if we do move to electronic identification, and we also have general aviation participating in that as well, we're now at a point where we can actually have total situational awareness of what's around us. So as an operator, as we move towards beyond visual line of sight capability, we now have so much more opportunity to do more complex stuff. So I think it is the right direction for the commercial industry to head.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got one more question. Let's activate that one. The committee recommends that CASA work with state and territory enforcement bodies to implement a nationally consistent enforcement regime. Basically, on-the-spot fines, it's the equivalent of parking meter enforcement. Now, you can joke about it, you can laugh about it, but at the end of the day, you either have regulations and so forth that can either be implemented and enforced, or you don't.
Yeah.
So
again, it was another one that most of our respondents agreed to. Obviously, CASA are currently not resourced to do this.
No, not at all.
So they've got a small team, and they're flat out looking after the regulations and approvals that we're all submitting at the moment.
If we wanted CASA to do this, the only way they could do that is if they had more income, and therefore drone licenses and registration might be hundreds of dollars to fund all of these people who are going to enforce the regulations, or we can delegate it to other bodies. So it does make sense.
Absolutely, it does. And, you know, hopefully it'll be some form of deterrent to people who are operating illegally.
Yep.
Yeah, look, it was good to go through those questions. We did, as I said, have a look at the first 5 questions last week. But Greg T., if you've got any other last-minute comments about the Senate report and where you think that's going, and any other comments and feedback?
The only thing I can say, we're meeting with CASA tomorrow to talk about where they're going to go, but we understand already that they are looking at registration, and they are looking at a tiered education program and putting into action a lot of these recommendations. So I can see most of them moving forward.
Just let me ask you about the tiered education program. One thing that kind of scared me a little bit, is it a pre-purchase or a post-purchase is the first tier? I couldn't quite work that out.
I'm not sure that that has been determined yet. I'm not sure.
See, there was this tier 1 was a purchase tier, and the next tier was a recreational use. So assuming those are two tiers that are in the report, that means you've got to do a test even before you buy a drone. And you know, I'm not trying to do fear-mongering. I'm just trying to understand that it didn't make sense to me the way the recommendations were written.
No, I agree. And I think, again, that recommendation was written around lines in the sand around recreational and commercial operators, whereas CASA have been moving more towards risk-based education systems, not what category you fit into in that regard.
Yeah, I think they need to remove that purchase testing, because, you know, there's so many. You don't have the right to purchase an RPAS. And what if you're making one, building it yourself? You can't buy a motor before you've got your... Anyway, I'll stop there.
There's an interesting parallel there, because I think the risk-based approach that gun licensing has is interesting. You actually have to get a license before you get a gun. Although now, I don't want to draw a parallel there at all, because that would be foolish. But of course, you can now build a pistol with a 3D printer quite easily, and they're looking at laws to forbid you from getting those plans of building a pistol, which is you know, interesting stuff. Again, I reckon that we've got to stay focused on the risk-based side of this. Most people, when they start out buying, you know, their first serious quad, are buying a Mavic. You know what I mean? And there's no way to parallel firearms and Mavics in terms of risk. I don't believe, anyway. But I do feel if you educate someone before they make their purchase, perhaps you may be doing them a favour. Perhaps you may be bringing them in as a pilot, bringing them into the responsibility of what they're going to own and what it will do. I don't think that, you know, pre-purchase licensing is necessarily wrong. I think the jury might be out on it, but you know, I think most people would agree in terms of the idea of getting the rules right. This is what I'm going to buy. This is what I can do with it. Before they have all of these, buy something and say, oh, now I know I can't do this with it, you know. Anyway, just my 2 cents. It's all about discussion at the moment.
Yeah, I'll just add my final 2 cents. I reckon there shouldn't be anything for pre-purchase. You can buy it, you can fly it inside your own building should you have one big enough to fly. That's your choice. If you then want to take it outside and fly recreationally, yeah, there should be a mandatory test, very simple one to understand the basics of flying safely, absolutely. And then for commercial, we've already got something there, and maybe that could be changed and modified. But yeah, I personally don't agree with the test before you buy, but that's just my 2 cents.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, Greg, thank you for joining us today. It was good to have you in. Let me ask you, is there anything else you'd like to say in wrapping up, certainly about AAUS and letting people know a little bit more about it before we wrap today?
I see a question on the screen there from Mick Malloy. As users, I guess the association have a number of categories of members. If you purely just want information from us, and we do pass on as much information that we can get, you can be a newsletter-only member of AAUS, which is free. If you want to participate in seminars and conferences and networking sessions that we do, being a member does give you discounted ability to do that. The other thing that being a member does is we've got a couple of insurance providers in QBE and AB Phillips who offer 10% discounts to our members. So if you are operating and you do want insurance, the insurance discount probably more than covers the cost of a membership.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Look, really good idea. Have we got any other questions while I'm here? Question, Greg, what does Johnny... We've got that, so that was from Mick. Any other hashtag questions?
We all went down to the AAUS conference en masse at Canberra this year. Was this year, wasn't it? Yeah, it was earlier. And we had a great time. You know, I've got to say, Greg, I think there were 5 of us there all together. and it was a really good couple of days.
Five from Morrison. There were more than 5 people there.
Oh yeah, I should say just 5 from my bunch, you know. And what was great about it, we booked an Airbnb house, so we shared this big kitchen together, and we lapped up the conference because every time we went home, you know, and over dinner, it was just great to discuss all of the things. It was a really good a point for us to, you know, to stay engaged. But I can encourage everybody, even if you don't join, you definitely want to be on the newsletter feed, because everything that comes down the pipeline there is good stuff, and very, very applicable to all sectors. So yeah, definitely join up for the newsletter.
Yeah,
I would join as a member, you know, but of course.
Absolutely. I just had the question from 400 AGL, our Phantom Trucker, AAUS website. We've now got that on the screen as well.
Great.
Okay, look, GT, thank you for participating, and we hope to have you back again at some point in the future.
Yes.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, John. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg.
Cheers.
See you, Greg. Bye-bye. So let's move on now. What time have we got? 11:48. Oh,
Yeah,
time
couple of
goes.
minutes.
There
It
are
does,
22
doesn't it?
watching and only 12 likes. What are the other 10 of you doing?
Well, I'm so glad. I'm glad we had Greg on today, because we've wanted to have him for a guest for a while, and you know, great to have that kind of information, that kind of you know, a person with that sort of knowledge on the show.
Yeah. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to switch to the Oz videos first.
Yeah, let's watch some footage.
And then, if we've got some time left, we'll do the topic we had last time, can you make money from flying a drone? But let's get to... Oh, and I pressed the wrong button again. Other video around the world, but it's the same basic thing anyway. Let's get started.
Oh, yeah.
So this first one was tow surfing in Western Australia, shot from a DJI Mavic Pro, looking really good. That was from Alistair Evans. And then we go to the Oz Outback family, St Arnaud, Victoria. I don't know how to spell it. Arnaud.
Beautiful.
Anyway, this one is interesting. Just having a look at some Australian bushland and certainly looking through fog there. And then this one, I love this video. This is from Zach Marshall, the old Telegraph track at Cape York, Australia.
Yeah, I know this one. It's a ripper.
Have you done much four-wheel driving, John?
I haven't done a lot. I've been up in the Cape, and I've been out with mates up in that area. But I've not done that with the camping. You know, we've gone out four-wheel driving. But look at this, man. Look at the gear.
Yeah. I want people to, from other parts of the world, watching today to appreciate this is what people do on a regular basis. They,
and you know
they
what,
like
guys,
to go and get their vehicles stuck.
You know what, and I tell you what, if you do get stuck out there, you are so far from getting any parts, or you know, we're a long way away from a gas station here.
But this, just keep watching. This gets funny in a moment.
Oh yeah.
By the way, here's an interesting topic. He was actually shooting this from his drone, even though it's on ground. He had a handle. But have a look at this ingenuity here, getting the weight balance right. Certainly getting the center of gravity on your aircraft, or in this case, your ground craft, right.
That's good. Yeah, that's the way. Oh yeah, I know this one too.
I've not heard of that before, but...
That's a cool shot. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's a really cool shot. And again, this type of low-level stuff, you know, you can only shoot that from a airborne platform, even though it's nice at ground level. Great idea, though. Look at here again. Just these super close-in work makes it look amazing.
And then moving from that, we go to Earth by Drone.
Yeah, beautiful.
So this is Northwest Australia by drone.
Kuhnert region.
So again, shot with a Mavic Pro, filmed in July. Unfortunately, we don't stream in 4K. I don't have fast enough internet. Thank you, Telstra.
But this
it looks beautiful.
Yeah, this is the Kimberleys, in fact. Just an absolutely beautiful part of the country. Very remote. More accessible these days if you want to see it in terms of ways to get out there, light aircraft and so forth, helicopter. But just amazing.
We've got 2 left. We've got, again, another Mavic Air shot. Captured in 4K, cold, wintry day. This one shot by Fernando Lecaros. And just a quick comment, all of these videos, we've got the creators of all of these videos listed in the description, so encourage you to go to their channels and have a look at both these videos and additional content from them as well to help support them. But I'm just amazed each and every week how many new videos are posted on YouTube each week.
Look at that, yeah.
This one, the title of the video, just amazing. This one shot by Holmesy FPV. But we do get so much really good drone footage showcasing both our pilots and different parts of Australia that you wouldn't otherwise necessarily see. So,
yeah, beautiful. That's great. That's skill. Well done. Awesome. Awesome.
Nearly at the end now. So while we're just getting to the end of the video, I just want to thank Greg Hilton, who compiles and searches and researches all of this for us each and every week. Thank you, Greg, for putting that together. We've got another Greg, GH. Have I got another one? Have I got...
That's pretty too.
Somehow I didn't have that on my sheet here, but that one's Mount Magnet.
Yeah. Again, contrasting light and always showing that that magic time of the day with the sun low, creating the longer shadows and the contrasting light. Always going to look good, depending on, of course, your angles and so forth, and what you're after. But when you've got a sunrise over water, of course, you've got a great reflection board, if you like, being the sea itself, which also creates those interesting colours and light. It's great. Look at that.
Beautiful footage. Yeah. So in coming weeks, Greg Hilton has actually volunteered to come and join the show each week, just at this point where he's going to talk about the footage of the week. So that'll be really good to have him come and participate. Yeah, I don't know what happened. My list, I'm missing a few of the videos on my paper in front of me, but it's all here in front of you at the moment. This one from Tasmania.
That's good.
But yeah, Greg comments every week that, you know, we limit this to about 8 minutes of video each week from Australia, and he just has a really troubling time because of how much good content there is to fit it in that time.
Oh, magic.
About 1 minute left of that, and then we're going to have a little quick talk about, because we do have just a few minutes left, about making money from a drone. Certainly Tasmania is a beautiful place to go to if you're wanting to have a look at some of the water there. They've got a lot of hydro kind of facilities in Tasmania and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. And we're coming to the end. How's that for a nice horizon end?
Beautiful.
Okay, so we're coming up very close to the end of our show. Let's just quickly have an informal chat, you and me, about the topic of money and can you make a living flying? We spoke about it very briefly last time. So,
yes, we did. Look, there's a couple of ways to look at this. You certainly won't make any money from your drone by selling it, first of all. It's an asset that depreciates, but picking the right one and making money with it, you would, first of all, people think, oh, I'll get an Inspire because I could do television or commercial work. Put that aside. You know, that industry is very competitive, covered by a couple of major companies that are very kitted out with camera work, and they are film guys. Now, the lesson there is that the film industry, people in the film industry worked out, let's get ourselves some aircraft and learn to fly and use them to make money. And so they are in that industry, they know it. Now, if you really want to make money, if you're in the real estate business and you sell houses, then having an aircraft will save you money, make you money, because you'll be able to take photographs. If you're not in the real estate industry and you don't know that industry, you're going to be lining up with lots of other people that own Phantom 4s and quads trying to sell their photos of properties. And there's not much in it at the moment.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
I have a question for you. Is it possible, based on what you know of Sydney's density, to fly within the standard operating conditions for real estate photography?
Yes, it is. And look, there is always that, provided you can tick those flying by day, 30-metre rule from
that
people.
Was the one I was thinking of, right? So,
well, that's not hard to do. I mean, we do commercial properties inspections on a Sunday morning, and I did one the other day in Fairfield. We put up a couple of cones, a little detour sign so that people walked under an awning along the street, and no problem at all. The area was so sparse. So you've got to pick your time. You know, on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, it's just not going to happen. So that's possible. But talking about how you get those jobs, and I think that's what we're really thinking of here. I say to people, if you want to get into flying, pure flying, and you don't have any sort of a job that might allude to that, you might be a teller at a bank. And so you say, well, I can't see how owning a drone could get me. Then think about the industries where inside the drone industry that might be a good take up for you. Instruction is always going to be instructors and learning. So what you do there is you get your license, you learn to fly, and then if you have a certificate in teaching, which is not too difficult to get, you can go to some of the teaching schools these days, and they're looking for instructors. And so that's a great way to get started in the industry. You'll meet lots of other people that are coming through with businesses that might want to employ you later, but it is an avenue where there is a demand for those pilots. So again, if you have a job, perhaps you're a park ranger, perhaps you're whatever you're working in, it's much better to see how having aerial photography or aerial data of any kind in your job might be an advantage, and go towards that first. Because at the moment, the industry is building on its various facets every day, new things every day that are out there. And what you said to me some time ago, Greg, when I started Morrison Robotics, was to perhaps not wear a watch, but wear a compass on your wrist. Have a direction that you want to go. If you have a particular vision for the type of flying that you'd like to do, then put that path down before you and realise what you might undertake to do it. If you just say, well, I'm going to buy a drone and see what work is out there, you will sit on your hands for a while. Yep. Because you're going to be waiting for a phone call that's not going to come your way. Pick your market. And I believe that although in the early stages you may find that there is a little bit slim pickings while you haven't got much experience, once you become an experienced operator and perhaps you fly fixed wings as well, I would certainly recommend that to everyone getting into this industry as a pilot. Learn to fly a fixed wing. Go and get yourself a foam model aircraft and learn to fly it well. And trust me, there will be in the future when that work at agricultural work steps up, we'll be using fixed wings more and more all the time, and those pilots will make double the amount of money that a quad pilot will make. At the moment, that's the case. If you can fly a fixed wing, you can make double the money to a quad pilot.
Absolutely. So if anyone does want someone to do some drone work, I've just put the Morrison Aerial Robotics URL into the chat, and I'm sure Mel, the Phantom Trucker, will put that on the screen in a couple of moments.
Yep.
So if anyone does want some work done, that's where to go. If you're in Australia, particularly not in Sydney or New South Wales, and you're in other parts of the country and you've got your license, get in touch with John. Maybe we can find some work for you in your area as well.
Yep. A little tip there, the insurance industry is maturing now with work that drones can do in terms of pre-approval insurance. So what that means is now if they're going to insure a property, the major insurers are saying, well, we want an aerial shot of the property before we insure it. We can see what the yard condition's like. We can see what the roof condition's like. We can get a general idea having a quick photo of a building we're going to insure. Now, this work at the moment is going to get a pilot $100 again for a quick shot of a house. You might go out and do 8 or 9 houses in a day, which will make sense with your Phantom 4. You don't need a lot of investment, but obviously they're going to be people that have got an REPL, so you've got your investment there of about $3,000. But you know, just before we close off this, Greg, I can recommend AAUS is a great. We should put that up there as well. AAUS, a great school, and they're sort of based in Newcastle, but all over Australia, and they do great work and preparing pilots to a good standard to move into the industry and work as well. So be prepared. You know, if you really want to make dough with it, don't treat it like a newspaper run. If you really want to make the jump, get licensed and get on board. And I believe there is real potential in this industry to make some good money.
Just before we go and close this topic, you mentioned how much money, just to let our US guys know how lucky they are. How much is it to get a license?
About $3,000.
Yep. I remember my wallet feeling that one. So for those guys in the US that you've got your Part 107 or whatever it is over there, just think how lucky you are.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's a 5-day course here. And it's basically a full accredited aviation course to become a commercial pilot here.
I've got a question here from Mick Malloy. What does an instructor get paid? Good question. Short answer.
Yeah, good question. I'll tell you what, I saw an ad the other day, 75,000 Australian dollars a year for a startup instructor. You will have to have flying experience with either a Cert 4 in teaching or have been a grade level instructor, aviation instructor, which they prefer. If you've been a manned aircraft instructor to some higher degree, you would get more money than that. But your 65 is the lowest I've seen, but about 75 grand a year for a startup.
Okay. Well, we're going to leave it there today. So we've reached the top of the hour plus a little bit. John, thank you very much for being here as always.
Thank you. Almost my pleasure.
And our closing announcements, again, reminders, please do like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Please do hit the bell so you can get the reminders about when we're going live. We've got a Facebook page. Please do subscribe and like to that page as well. We've got Twitter. And for those of you who are not technology minded, which you obviously are if you're here, but just in case you've got anything you'd like to send, there's a postal address 5/127 Princess Highway, Sylvania. And if you would like to share your video with us, we'd love to hear from you. Upload at gregkuhnert.com. Please do send a link to a video somewhere. Do not send the actual video. We do need to, make it easy for us to download. Mail servers don't like getting so much stuff in one hit. So that's all for this week. I will just finish with one point. The competition is still running for the DJI Osmo Mobile. Our growth as a channel has slowed a little bit, which is interesting. Now, we've got a funky little graph of the number of people that are on our channel, which someone's working very hard to get up on the screen now. 517. Last week we were 510. Now, before we were growing at like 20, 30, 50 or whatever a week.
Oh, look, there we go. There's another 2.
Oh, look at that. See, the line goes up.
Ah.
Is there anyone watching here? Is there anyone watching here right now that is not subscribed? And if so, can you press the button just so we can see if it works?
I think it just did. There you go. Thanks for those 2 people.
Thank you to the 2 people, whoever you are. So let's go back to our normal shot for now. And having a look at the comments here. Thanks for a nice show. Have a great week. Part 107 is just the test you pay for, though. Classes will be extra. The 3K you paid sounds like it includes classes. Yes,
oh, yeah,
it does.
Most certainly. Yeah, that's the full gambit, plus your Part 107 test, plus your what we call your exam and flight test. Yep. Everything's about $3,000 here. And
I would personally like it if it is possible to do just the testing, right? Because there's no reason why you and I couldn't go and educate each other and then send someone to go and do the test. If you pass the test, it should be that way.
Yeah, it was that way. There was a concern when the sub 2 kilo license came in. There was a deal done. There's no other way to put it. So just so that obviously listeners know about it, Australia, if you're flying an aircraft under 2 kilos, then you can fly commercially without anything. You just need to notify CASA that you're operating and have a reference number. So you do register of sorts, register your name. So when they did that, the flying school and the training fraternity inside RPAS said, hang on, that's going to be it for us. We're over. Close the doors. But what they did was they made this rule that, to get actual license, you need to go to a registered training school. And that protected their industry. That's a whole nother show to talk about that. But note
let me just ask. Yeah, as the industry is changing, what do you think about the possibility of going back to just the test, but all commercial work requires the test
without the course?
Without the course.
Okay, I'm going to be really honest here at the end of the show.
Yeah.
In the old days, I tested a number of pilots, manned aircraft pilots, who were easily qualified, had lots of aviation experience. I took them out, went flying with them, and then sent them out with a license because I was able to do that. And in retrospect, they have some holes in their knowledge in terms of I'm
not suggesting REPL able to do the testing, but the existing training schools authorised to do the test.
Yep.
And then where they get their training from to do that is up to that pilot.
Well, you can still do that with a training organisation. You can front up to them and say, I've done all of my REPL theory, I've got my 5 hours, I've done it, I just want to do a test, and they will just charge you for the test. That is possible, and good schools will allow you to do that.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
That's no problem at all. You can do that.
Okay. Look, thank you for that, John. Thank you for everyone watching today. It's been fun as always. See you next time. And next week we have got, as I shuffle my pieces of paper, next week we've got Rick Smith from Drone Valley. And I'll give you a big hint, everyone. Do not miss next week. Rick had promised to come earlier and he apologised for not being able to make it. So he said there are some prizes and some giveaways. I don't know what that means, but make sure you're there.
Okay.
So that's next week, the 18th of August. One little disclaimer, I'm having some surgery on Thursday next week. My 5th time having sinus surgery, so I may look a little bit puffy, but I'll still be here unless... I'll still be here. I'll be here.
Yeah. Okay, good. Good on you, mate.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Right. See you next time.
See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.